Are you wondering if a particular fabric is appropriate for making a slipcover or for that upholstery project you're about to start? Then stay put, because today I'm going to talk about which fabrics are ideal for slipcovers and upholstery. And the most important things to consider, choosing an appropriate fabric for your slipcover or for your upholstery project is kind of important. It will give you a better finished product, and it'll make the whole sewing or upholstery project so much easier, which in turn makes it way more enjoyable. Regarding slipcover, I've got 3 important things to consider when it comes to picking the right fabric for a slipcover project. And those same 3 things you can apply to upholstery fabric and an upholstery project. So let's get started. When I first started my sewing business years ago, I had 2 designers that I did a lot of work for. One of the designers, she asked me to make a round table skirt for one of her clients. And it was just a, waterfall style table skirt for a round table. When she brought me the fabric, it was a really heavyweight, almost upholstery type of a fabric. And I was like, oh boy, there's hardly any drapeability in this fabric. So I made the table skirt and delivered it and installed it. And when I put it on her table, it was a foyer table, beautiful foyer table in a gorgeous foyer. And the table skirt just kind of stuck out straight, not straight, but it just didn't drape well. It just kind of stuck out and didn't have any nice, soft flowiness to it. It was just stiff. Her client reached out to her not long after that and was like, I really would prefer to have a box pleated table skirt for my table. And I think the reason was because the stiff table skirt just wasn't super appealing. So anyways, the designer came back to me and she brought me the fabric for a box pleated table skirt. The fabric that she chose was this really soft, flowy, lightweight fabric. And now I needed to make a box pleated table skirt out of it, which a box pleat really needs a little bit of a thicker fabric because it's such a structured, tailored look to it. And both times, it was all completely the wrong fabric. If she had just reversed those 2 fabrics, it would have been perfect. But that was just one example of how choosing the appropriate fabric really does make a difference in the final product and how things look and how things drape. So for a slipcover, you want a drapery weight fabric. Just about any drapery weight fabric will work for a slipcover. You can also use upholstery fabric, but I wouldn't go with the heaviest weight upholstery fabric. I don't even recommend using upholstery fabric for slipcovers because there are places in slipcovers where you're going to be going through 6 and 8 layers of fabric. And so it just makes it really difficult to sew a slipcover when you're using upholstery weight fabric. But any drapery weight fabric will do. The number 1 most important thing to consider when you're purchasing or picking out a fabric for your slipcovers is washability. What I do when I buy a fabric and I'm planning to use it for a slipcover, and this is really important that you wash and dry your fabric before you make the slipcover, because the best thing about slipcovers is the washability, right? I mean, isn't that the whole reason why we make slipcovers, is so we can take them off and throw them in the washing machine? So what I do before I throw my whole 12 yards or 15 yards in the washing machine is I test it, and I'll show you how I do that. So what I do is I take my fabric that I'm testing and I cut 2 squares of it, 5 inches each, both exactly the same, both 5-inch squares. Exactly the same. And then I take one of the squares and I throw it in the washing machine and I leave 1 square out and I don't do anything with it. And I just look to see how this fabric responds to being washed and dried in my washing machine. And then you can compare it to the piece that you did not wash and dry. This is just the way it comes, and see how much shrinkage there is in your fabric, if at all, and how the fabric responds to washing and drying, whether or not it's going to be super wrinkly or if it's going to be really super frayed, or just how the fabric responds to washing. That's the first thing I do when I get a fabric home, is do my square test and see how it works. And then if the fabric washes well and is not crazy wrinkly, or what, if I just like the way that it looks after it's been washed and dried and it doesn't get all pilly or weird on me, then I will go ahead and wash the whole 15 yards of fabric for my slipcover. And sometimes I'll wash it myself in pieces, and sometimes I take it to my local dry cleaner that does huge loads, and he'll wash. If I need to get washed like 20, 30, 40 yards of fabric, I'll take it to him and he does a beautiful job. So something to think about. After washability, which is the most important thing to consider for your slipcover, the second thing to consider is drapeability. You want to make sure that your fabric has some drape to it, a nice hand. Let me show you. So this is a drapery weight fabric, and it's a cotton linen blend. And it's a medium weight fabric, and you can see that it's a little bit stiff right now because it's not washed, and so it still has the sizing on it from the store. But you can see how when you drape this on your body, it actually does drape. It flows. You don't have, the fabric's not just stiff and sticking out. So drapeability is super important. So by drapeability, what I mean is, does the fabric hang nicely? Does it flow and hang well? Will it work around curved fabrics, etc.? So if you have a piece that's super square, like I do in my living room, you can get away with a stiffer fabric. But generally, for slipcovers, you want your fabric to have a nice hand, a nice drape to it. So the number 3 thing to consider when you're trying to determine if a fabric is appropriate for a slipcover is also the see-throughness or the opacity of the fabric. If you're using a fabric that is a medium weight drapery fabric, and let's say it's a white or an off-white, you need to make sure that it is got enough weight to it and it's not so loose that you can see through it. The opacity is important, and I have had situations where people wanted a slipcover for a sofa that had a floral print on it in a navy blue with, colorful flowers, and the fabric that they chose was an off-white linen, and it didn't cover the pattern underneath. So that's definitely something that you need to consider if you're going to go with a white or an off-white fabric, which was so common for so many years, that the fabric has enough thickness and opacity that you don't see the old fabric underneath it. So that's the third thing to consider. So with upholstery, basically the same, almost all 3 of those same principles apply in a different way. So with upholstery fabric, you can now buy Krypton and all these different kinds of performance fabrics like Revolution that are washable. So that is actually something to think about now with upholstery fabric. Do you want to have an upholstery fabric that you can just scrub with dish soap or even bleach? Then pick a performance fabric. As far as drapeability, that's something that you don't need to think about with upholstery because upholstery is generally pretty stiff, and so drapeability is not something to consider for upholstery fabric. And then the see-throughness on upholstery fabric, if you're buying upholstery weight fabric, it won't be see-through. And even if it were to be, you wouldn't have anything underneath it because you're stripping off all your old fabric anyways. So the bottom line is you want to pick a fabric that is a medium weight, drapery weight fabric for slipcovers. That's going to be your best bet. Drapery weight, slipcover weight, any of the fabrics that say for home decor projects like pillows and bags and draperies, and that's generally how fabrics are categorized. And then upholstery weight fabric is always categorized as upholstery weight fabric. So that's how you know. But those are just the things to consider when you are purchasing fabric, or if you have fabric already that you are thinking of using and wondering, is this going to be appropriate for a slipcover, or is this going to be appropriate for a upholstery? Hopefully this helped you. If you're about to start a slipcover project and you want some instruction on making slipcovers, I have a whole bunch of slipcover videos. I'll link to those videos right here, and I'll see you over there.